Ladies and gentlemen, I think we should begin. I'm Blair Rubel, and I'm Vice President for Programs here at the Wilson Center. And on behalf of our Director and CEO, Jane Harmon, I'd like to welcome you. I think most of you know that this is the Wilson Center is the official presidential memorial to Woodrow Wilson. It was established to honor the only American president with a PhD by bringing together the world of ideas and world of public affairs. And I think that this session reflects the powerful and positive interaction that can happen when thinkers and doers, ideas and action come together. I normally am not given to bragging, but today's a special day for the Wilson Center, and it relates a little bit to this meeting. This morning, the University of Pennsylvania released its rankings of the world's 6,281 think tanks. And we are number 5 in the US and number 10 worldwide, which is a great honor. But more importantly for this meeting, and I think people like Monday have had a lot to do with this, we are ranked the number 4 think tank in the world on questions of international development. And that is directly relevant to the discussion that's going to be happening today. And one of the reasons, I have to admit, we were a little bit surprised by that ranking. It is a ranking done by polls of specialists around the world. And I think one of the reasons for the recognition we've gained in this area has to do with meetings like this and with wonderful staff people like Monday, and wonderful programs like the Africa program. So I'm not just bragging for the Wilson Center as a whole, but what I'm trying to say is we're very fortunate to have a great Africa program, as you all know. I'm delighted that we're able to co-host this session with the African Union, and it's a discussion on the strategic importance of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. For the last 15 years, AGOA has been a key pillar in U.S.-Africa economic and trade relations. But as we all know, the clock is ticking, and it is set to expire in September of this year. So there's a lot that has to happen, and this is a good opportunity to focus on the looming deadline and what all of us can do to be sure that African and U.S. stakeholders can find a way forward before the clock runs out. We're especially delighted to welcome the African ministers, Ms. Florizelle Lizer, sorry? Lizier, okay. I'm sorry. I have to admit I'm often referred to as Rubble instead of Rubel, so it's, and she is the Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Africa. Mr. Stephen Land, President of Manchester Trade, and they will be sharing African and U.S. perspectives on a way forward. And again, I'm going to turn the floor over to one of the stars that has made the Wilson Center so successful. Monday, it's all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Rubel. It helps to have good bosses. I appreciate you taking the time to welcome our guests this afternoon. Honorable ministers, ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I really wish to add my voice to Dr. Rubel's in welcoming you to the Wilson Center and to this really important debate on the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act and the way forward. For me, it is really good and gratifying to see so many people in the audience here today who have been extremely active and have worked tirelessly on AGOA. So this should make for a very productive discussion and exchange between key U.S. and African stakeholders. So we've had much discussion over the last 18 months about the importance of AGOA to Africa and to U.S.-Africa relations, the need to renew AGOA, as well as some of the key enhancements and improvements that could be made to AGOA as we move forward. We're now 8 months away from AGOA's expiration, and there is anxiety in many circles about its renewal. It is this anxiety that explains in part the presence of the ministerial delegation here with us this week, and we are pleased to welcome all of you to this discussion. I know that as we look to what AGOA has meant to Africa and what it could mean to the future of Africa and to U.S.-Africa relations, we're also concerned about its enhancement, but perhaps more importantly, what we could do now to ensure that AGOA is not allowed to expire in September. This is especially important given that the political landscape in Congress has changed after the November 2014 elections, and it is not yet clear what this change means for AGOA. To help us navigate these issues and to talk about potential way forward on both the renewal of AGOA and the enhancement of AGOA, let me now introduce our speakers, and I'll do so in the order in which they will speak. We will first hear the African perspectives on this issue. So our first speaker will be Honorable Sekolami Sowale, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Cooperatives and Marketing from the Kingdom of Lesotho. He will be followed by the Honorable Gabriel Nchango, the Minister of Trade, Small and Medium Enterprises, Handicrafts and Development of Services from the Republic of Gabon. Unfortunately, he is stuck in traffic, but we've saved him a seat, so he'll be able to share his perspective when he gets this. And then our third speaker on the African side will be Honorable Etienne Ghislaine Sinantubu, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade from the Republic of Mauritius. Once we've heard those African perspectives, we'll get perspectives from the United States side. And we thought it would be good to get both a US government perspective and a non-governmental perspective. So I'm delighted to introduce to you Ms. Flory. As I was just going to say to all of us, you're Ms. Flory, who is the Assistant U.S. Deputy Representative for Africa in the Office of United States Trade Representative, and she has been working tirelessly over the last months on AGOA, who will provide us with a U.S. government perspective. She will be followed by Mr. Stephen Lande, who is President and CEO of Manchester Trade, a private sector organization. I have asked each of our distinguished speakers to just raise the key points that they feel need to be conveyed here today. So we've asked them to go 5 minutes each, 3 main points that they would like to convey that are important to them, and then we'll spend the rest of the time in a discussion and exchange of views with the panelists and the speakers. So with that, let me turn the microphone over to the Minister from Lesotho. Sir, the mic is yours. And you can
Thank
speak.
you very much, Monday. I appreciate the invitation to this center to put a perspective of why we're here and why I'm leading this delegation to the United States of America. My name is Kulumin Zola. I'm the Minister of Trade, like I said. Last year we had a meeting in Addis Ababa where the African Minister of Trade nominated me to head the delegation to the United States to put forward African perspective on AGOA. Remember that we had a summit in August, and immediately in September I followed up. I came to the United States again on Lesotho alone. But now I'm carrying the whole African continent, beneficiaries of AGOA, to come to the US Congress to say that we would like the US Congress to consider renewing AGOA now. Because if that does not happen within the next 2 months, the likelihood is that the investors will look elsewhere for sourcing. And the buyers and the investors will close shop. And in Lesotho alone, 40,000 people will lose their jobs in one country alone. So there are about 30-something AGOA beneficiaries. And if that happens, we will lose, they lose jobs, and mostly women will suffer and children will suffer because most of the factories are manned by workers who are female in all respect. Should that happen, that could also cause instability in governments in Africa. That would probably also affect democracy that we are fighting so hard to uphold. And we believe that if AGOA, in fact, AGOA has done a lot to make Africa talk. We never had an opportunity as Africa to talk to one another and even discuss issues of intertrade and infrastructure and so on and so forth. But AGOA has assisted us to come together and discuss these issues and how we could trade among ourselves and with the US. So we have been able to come here to meet several important figures, important people, important congressmen, senators, to talk about this issue and to show our case that should AGOA not be renewed, that will mean that the orders will not be done on time, and that will cause a closed shop or close of shop, and that would bring disastrous repercussions in the United States and in Africa. And apart from that, it is a security threat. We are now facing problems by ISIS. We are now facing problems in Africa by Boko Haram. And people who are hungry can easily be conscripted into these formations. And that could be a threat for both the security of Africa and for security of the United States of America. I'm not threatening you, but I'm saying this is the reality that could easily come. So as Lesotho, we uphold rule of law, democracy, and fight against corruption. And we just won the first country in Africa that had a coalition government that has just collapsed. That means we're going for elections on the 28th of February, and I'm likely not to be a minister because I lost primaries. That's how AGOA has assisted. That's how America has assisted in pushing us as Africans to be as democratic as possible, to have democratic institutions, and should that fail, then I think Africa will look elsewhere. And guess what? Europe, no preferences. America, AGOA as a preference. China, we don't trust doing business with them.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Minister from Mauritius.
Thank you very much. If you try to identify the elements which actually show the strategic importance of the renewal of AGOA, in my mind, we should first look at two things. First one goes back to 2000, when Congress passed that piece of legislation. And the second one is the figures attached to AGOA. So if we go back to the main purpose, which was highlighted at the beginning of the 21st century when Congress voted this piece of legislation, I think three things were highlighted in this first point. First of all, that the United States wanted to encourage export-led growth. It was not anymore aid, aid, aid. It was trade, trade, trade. So the first point in my mind was the encouragement of export-led growth. The second point was, and which makes it so strategic now, was the economic development of sub-Saharan Africa. And the third aspect of this first point is the intention of the United States to improve its relations with sub-Saharan Africa. These are the three components which are to be found, I would say, in the genesis of the 2000 legislation. And it is quite, in my mind, unfortunate that after 15 years, the 15 years expired on the 30th of September, that renewal, although everyone tells us is inevitable, we tend to learn that the duration of the extension is going to be less. Now, I believe that we should first analyze from the genesis of the legislation which was passed whether we need to still we need to encourage export-led growth, whether we need to still help to bring economic development in sub-Saharan Africa, and whether we still need to improve the United States' economic relations with sub-Saharan Africa. If the answer is yes, and in my mind, the answer should be in the affirmative to all 3 points, then A, it should be renewed, B, urgently, and 3, for another 15 years. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point, which I said is made up of the figures. One of the figures I heard in one of the meetings is, what is the cost of AGOA to the budget? What is the cost of AGOA to the United States? And I heard that the figure is $300 million. That is, I understand, what is the loss of revenue from the preferential treatment given to the products. Of course, I stand to be corrected, but that's what I heard from an authority from the United States. And if you consider non-petroleum products, the exports of Africa into the United States in 2013 was $4.9 billion.
Non-oil.
Of course, non-petroleum.
Yeah.
Non-petroleum was $4.9 billion US dollars. On the other hand, the exports of the United States into sub-Saharan Africa for the corresponding period, I should add non-oil, to compare like with like, is in excess of $25 billion. So again, if you then look at the second aspect, there's no way, there's no comparison. This act should be renewed. So I thought that these were the two facts. Since I have to give 2 or 3, I'll leave it at 2. I think those 2 are complex enough to see together. Maybe what I will end on is the apparel side, because this is what is causing a lot of anxiety, both in Lesotho, where our head of delegation as Minister of Trade has said, and from the perspective of Mauritius. Apparel for 2013, inclusive of textile, actually brought in $1.8 billion US dollars of exports into the United States. But if the orders are not placed in March this year, all those companies exporting those nearly $2 billion worth of apparel and textile products close down. So, which is why we are trying to convince the lawmakers in the United States. Please, look at AGOA on a standalone basis. Don't attach it to any complex or complicated other legislation or to any other contentious legal provisions which would not normally concern AGOA. But where, unfortunately, AGOA would not be anymore a strategic piece of legislation, but a piece of bargain for politicians. Let's try to avoid that and get AGOA renewed as a matter of urgency for sub-Saharan Africa. I think I'll rest my case here, madam.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, let me turn it over to get some U.S. perspective, and you might want to maybe even respond to some of the key issues that you might have heard from honorable ministers.
So, first of all, thank you to you, Mondi, and to the Woodrow Wilson Center for hosting us, and most especially for hosting the ministers. I think that their being here at this point is an excellent time to be here, because clearly, and I know many of you who are here participating in this event know that there's a lot of discussion now on AGOA and its renewal. So this is perfect timing. And we have countries such as Lesotho, which is the largest apparel exporter under AGOA here. We have Mauritius, which is one of the most diversified economies, taking advantage of AGOA in different areas. I've had a chance to visit eyewear and other kinds of factories there producing products for export here. And Gabon is one of the oil beneficiaries of AGOA, so it's a good mix of countries to come. Let me just say on behalf of the Obama administration, and speaking at this particular point for Ambassador Froman, the U.S. Trade Representative, that we in the administration remain very committed to AGOA's renewal. And we've talked in the past about its seamless renewal. We're also talking now about its timely renewal. And we, as you know, had a review of AGOA, a comprehensive review of AGOA, which ended before the Leaders' Summit and allowed the administration to put forward some ideas to Congress for ways that we could not only renew AGOA and extend it, but also improve it. Because one of the things we realize is that merely extending AGOA and renewing it is not necessarily going to lead to the Africans, our AGOA partners, fully utilizing AGOA. And that is something that we talked about at the AGOA Forum that Ambassador Froman hosted, and also was discussed amongst the leaders, that it's also important that Africa have the capacity to take advantage of the market access that AGOA provides, but also to be in a position to take advantage of the global economy, to trade more with each other in Africa, boosting intra-African trade, which is so important, but also becoming more integrally connected to the global trading system. So we know that AGOA has been a cornerstone of our economic relationship. We know that it has contributed, as Minister Nswole said, to being able to talk to each other. That's what the AGOA Forum does. Every year allow us an opportunity at very high levels to sit down and speak with each other about the U.S.-Africa or U.S. Sub-Saharan Africa economic relationship. It is important, but we also know that we have to work on the capacity issues. That is critically important. And we've been working with our African partners as well as others to look at what are the ways that we might be able to enhance the utilization of AGOA. During the African Leaders Summit, President Obama announced in a memorandum and established a steering group that would be focused on helping Sub-Saharan Africa to improve its trade and investment capacity. And we've been working very vigorously in that steering group, and we'll be having recommendations that go forward to the President probably by early February. So we're doing that now. And then I guess the last thing that I would say that's really important is we are also aware of the fact that Africa is in a different place than it was 14 years ago. And they are in a different place, and the global trading system is also in a different place. And everyone recognizes the tremendous opportunities for doing business in Africa and with Africa. So we're also thinking about what are the ways that beyond AGOA we can enhance the U.S.-Africa trade and investment relationship. This is an important time to be thinking about that, even as we are working with Congress and all of the stakeholders that are here and have been here for a long time to extend AGOA. It's important for us now to look at what are the ways that that partnership can be enhanced.
Thank you. Thank you. Steve, you're good to go?
I'm good to go. Well,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
You were wondering for a while there.
I shouldn't begin with this comment, but when you get over 70, you got to say them, but you're not going to have much longer. And as you know, we have full respect what's politically correct, but when I was coughing, I noticed one lady brought me water, one lady brought me pills, and all the men forgot it. So I'm not making what that means, but I want to say I was very well treated, and I thank them very
Not
much.
pills, just Halls. I didn't give any pills. No pills, just some Halls drops, please.
I think
Get
there
that
was
on tape.
We got to clean up. In any case, I think we as a country is very lucky and is really blessed to have 3 ministers who are in Africa, one even involved in an election campaign, who have time to come to the U.S. and spend time discussing with the program. No one summoned, no one threatened to do anything to anybody if they did not give concessions. This is a program that's designed as a partnership. And the fact that 3 ministers come and give us this much time and effort, I think is really worthy of note. And I really want to thank you for the appreciation for that particular visit. The U.S. political process, like all political processes, are strange. They have their own way to do things. And I know a lot of questions are raised. I mean, I, for one, am not happy that AGOA may pass on a controversial bill, but there may be no other way to pass it, because there are some people who like trade promotion authorities and like Africa. Some people like Africa and may not like trade promotion authority. I don't want to go there. What I want to simply say is that in the U.S. political process, if a bill is going to pass, if a bill is going to be in a position where you can't amend it, if AGOA came up by itself, everybody would love AGOA, there'd be no question. But then, oh, I have a pork farmer here in, I should say pork being Jewish, I have a beef farmer, or being Muslim, I have a beef farmer here, you know, and is a little concerned about this particular product. Can't we put a little amendment on for this person? And, oh, yeah, I like Africa, but don't you like your constituencies more? Oh, there's a problem in unfair trade practice. That's why you try to put AGOA on an omnibus bill that has a very good chance of passing. And that's the decision that appears to be made by the political leadership as the way to move it forward. And if that's the decision they make, they've gotten us AGOA, they've kept it going for 14 years, they'll keep it going for another 10 or 15 years, I'm sure. But it's this kind of a decision that I think we have to take. So my own feeling is that, like many of us, we would like to see this or that in AGOA. We have our own feelings and so on. But at the end of the day, what is most important is that the U.S. political process supports AGOA. And that is most demonstrated by the fact that there has been a change, as you know, in the control of the U.S. Senate. I remember there's a lot of concern, what is going to happen to AGOA? Is AGOA going to be delayed? And the message we got back was clear, and it's correct. AGOA is going to go forward no matter who results in an election. And part of that, and I'm going to look at Flory, who's sitting next to me. I'm going to think of the Ways and Means Committee, Angela Ellard, who's been there for years. Mr. Eisenstadt over doing the staff of the Finance Committee, who's a USTR graduate and so on. But it's these people that keep the program going. And we may debate with them, they're always open, but what they put in that program is what we have at the end of the day. And for that, I think the second thank you really goes to the staff and the recognition that these are the people who are moving us along. And we are moving along. There is no question. People don't take it for granted when they say AGOA is going to be renewed this year. That is an accomplishment. I won't tell you how many people's legislation is not going to be renewed this year. So let me put that on the record as well. Let me make comment that from what we were told, within weeks, not months, there's going to be something that's going to happen with AGOA as far as the bill. Until then, the bill is open. Some of us would like to see some enhancement to the bills. I think the areas that have been identified by USTR Froman in his testimony before the Finance Committee are the correct areas we have to look at. Could there be a smoother origin rule? Could we look at product coverage, adding projects? If there's something better than the current eligibility requirement, where a country is either on one day, off the next day, is there something in the middle? These are the kinds of issues that are being looked at now. And decisions will be made about them in the not too distant future. But once those decisions are made, we then have AGOA. And that's what we must pass on a timely basis in order not to create that issue. So I don't know what will be in AGOA and what each of these details will be in these particular areas, but what will come out will be, as somebody said, improved AGOA. One also must realize that there might be some things in AGOA to take care of U.S. interests. There's great interest in the U.S., for example, over agricultural access and some kinds of barriers to U.S. agricultural exports, which may be left over from European experiences and so on. But they're being discussed. We're going to have to figure out how to deal with these economic partnership agreements. Africa cannot be responsible for Europe forcing Africa to sign agreements which discriminate in some cases against the U.S. by threatening to close European markets to African goods when we were leaving them open under AGOA. So you can't blame Africa, but you should work on mechanisms to make sure that during the period of extension that there's as level a playing field as possible for African products. I think it's crucial. But on the other hand, in renewing AGOA, we must feel that it plays such a crucial role in African integration, that there must be no discrimination among AGOA beneficiaries at this stage, because they are moving themselves towards regional integration. They have some great schedules. The African Union, they talk about an African customs union, a regional customs union by 2017. The Abuja Treaty talks about an African customs union by 2019. Those are great dates. And if the U.S. can promote them and encourage them, fine, because at the end of the extension of AGOA, whether it be for 10, 12, 15 years, if Africa is able to negotiate as a group, it will join the European Union, for example, who's negotiating with as a group. So the whole view of AGOA is to make sure that it remains this kind of universal program for Africa. Africans have their own responsibilities. One, take care of U.S. interests, but two, in every African country, as far as I know, and I'll look at Flory, who actually speaks to them, have all agreed on having a special strategy for AGOA. And so they have to have their AGOA action plans. And that is very important, too, to take better advantage of the program and so on. So I think that's moving along well in a very positive light. Let me just say one other thing, because the chairman has given us our time period, and we're trying to make our 3 points, is that I, for one, would hope that we can reconvene here in this particular auditorium under Miss Monday no later than April 30th. That's my date. I pay my taxes April 15th. So April 30th to celebrate the renewal of AGOA in a way that will assure the security for Africa. So I'm telling you that I'm expected to be invited, Madam Monday, at that point of time to join in the celebration. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much to all 4 of our speakers for raising some really key and important points in a very short window of time that we gave them. What we're going to do now I know this is an issue that all of you sitting in here feel very passionately about and very strongly about. What I'd like to do is open it up for Q&A so we can maximize the discussion and exchange of views on how best to move forward. So we will go to Q&A. I will ask people to make a question, to have a question or make a statement, no more than a minute. No more than a minute, please. There's a wealth of expertise sitting in the room, and we want to get as many views as possible to engage with our speakers here. So I'll take 3 questions or comments at a time, 1 minute each time, and if you'd identify yourself, your organization, and the speaker to whom you're directing the question, we will go from there. Does that sound like good rules of engagement? All right. So if you just raise your hand, I'll point to you, you'll get a mic, and we will go. The gentleman in the back over there, please.
Right. Pardon me. My name's Walker Williams. I'm with Leadership Africa. I want to thank the Wilson Center, and I want to thank our distinguished guests and panelists. I have a very simple question, and I just wanted to hear from our panelists if there's anything they want to see in a renewed AGOA. There are a lot of things that Steve just mentioned, eligibility and product and whatnot and so forth, but from an African perspective, there's something that they just want to be in this AGOA when it's renewed and passed. Thank you.
Okay. Take a question from the lady up front, my sister here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rosemary Segera. I'm a president of Segeros International Group. I'm based here in Washington, D.C., and I'm from Kenya. Thank you so much for your wonderful speeches. As a Kenyan, African, and American based here, we've fought to extend the first AGOA. The first textile and apparel, I was part of it. Nobody sent me, but I saw this was valuable for Africa. As the Mauritian minister said, we are not looking just because of the volume. Let's take it as Africans and Africa to get AGOA, because Africa is now shining. Africa, as Lisa said, 14 years, Africa is not Africa now. Africa, we are looking at the future of Africa. Let's all join hands and make AGOA extended. Nobody sends me, nobody says, but we need to get on the hill. Mr. Landy, people like Benedict, Rosa Whittaker, who went, Florazil, everybody has fought for this AGOA from the first extension, second, and now we want to make it. I write letters through there every day, passing, knocking doors at the Congress. I'm not a minister, I'm just a civil society. This is going to benefit African civil society. Thank you. So let's all join hands and make this happen.
Ambassador Mulamula. I think you have a mic right there.
Thank you, Monde. I have only 1 minute, so I'll dispense the niceties. But I have one question to my good friend and sister, Honorable Froley. You spoke about having it AGOA renewed but enhanced. I want you to know, just in one few sentences, how do you see it enhanced? Because if I go into the rhetoric, of course, we want to see that at least it opens up to the agricultural products. I don't want to go into the list, but it just tell us, to assure us, if it's enhanced, how is it going to be enhanced? Thank you.
Okay, I think two very important questions. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Two really important questions and one statement encouraging us all to come with a strategy about engaging on the renewal and of AGOA, and that there's room for all actors, government and non-governmental, to be a part of this effort. So thank you very much for that question. As for the question, it's really the same question that we got from Mr. Williams and Ambassador Mulamula, asking from an African perspective and a US perspective, what is the one thing each of you would like to see included in an enhanced AGOA? Just one thing, what would be the priority be for you? And sir, my brother from Lesotho, I'll start here with you and work it down the table.
Thank you very much. I think what is important really for this mission is the renewal of our AGOA without necessarily looking at the enhancements at the moment. But there are lots of them. AGOA, like we said, has been able to unify Africa more. AGOA itself has been able to break the walls that used to exist among those who speak Portuguese and those who speak English and those who speak French. But now we are here with the ministers who speak French, who speak Portuguese, and the African Union has sent us to come and talk about this. So I think what is important now, there are many other issues, including trade facilitation, and others, that I know that Ambassador Foreman is very much interested in that one, in the trade facilitation and what America gets in the future. But we're saying that AGOA has assisted Africa to really look at the way it does things, at the way it approaches trade relations with the rest of the world, and how Africa is going to play a role in the global trade. So I believe that of course we want to enhance. We are there. America is there with investors to assist in Africa in road building, infrastructure, generation of electricity, solar, hydro, and wind. And we are looking for expertise from the United States to assist in Africa. Not giving aid, but participating and partnering with African private sector. We are looking at growing our own middle class, so that when we have the strong middle class, it means that growth is guaranteed. Growth is guaranteed. So what I'm saying is that every other issue will be discussed or is being discussed simultaneously. But the mission now is to say, should AGOA not be renewed in the next couple of months? There is a threat. And for us to recover, you know the time when AGOA and the third country provision, public provision, were not going together in parallel, something happened. Nose down. So if AGOA stops, it will take us a long time to recover. And Africa may have to look for, I'm not threatening, it's elsewhere. And we don't want to break the relationship that we've had with the United States from 500 years ago. Although it was a painful history when we started to meet, but we're saying now we're looking for partnership. We're looking for a trade relationship that's going to correct whatever anger we're having with the Caucasians who took us from Africa. So we're saying that let's partner. We have got a relationship, a long-term relationship, but AGOA came and enhanced that. So we know that there are other issues that we need to discuss. We need to discuss South Africa, bilaterals, and so on and so forth. But we're saying here, the important thing is the renewal. Okay. And all enhancements will be looked at, or are being looked at. Okay. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Minister from Mauritius, what's your one priority issue for enhancement?
The one thing that I think ought to be added has two limbs. And however, it is based on some figures again. A congressional report dated 2014 tells us that the United States imports from sub-Saharan Africa under AGOA is less than 2% of its overall imports. And out of those 2%, 77% is petroleum products. So the one thing which I think, and the two limbs thereof, are as follows. Africa must be given the capacity of using and optimizing AGOA. And the second limb of that is that I think this is a wise thing that I've heard the word an AGOA country strategy. Perhaps each country, that is why 10 years in my mind, with all due respect, is insufficient. Because, I mean, you know, you're only importing 2%, what's the big deal? You know, I'm saying 15 years more. But an AGOA country strategy would allow, you know, as we say in French, dans la durée, on the time space, you would be able to strategize, to make the action plan and the implementation plan with expected results. I think this is very important to move from this minimal, I could even say nominal 2% US imports.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
still welcome. Still welcome. I mean, we can't spit in our dish.
No, thank you so much. I think I'm hearing a couple of things from the African side in terms of the enhancement. I would say with regard to the minister from Lesotho, a key point he has been hitting on this renewal issue, that let's focus on renewal first before we concentrate on, let's focus on renewal before we concentrate on the enhancement. And it strikes me as part of the issue here seems to be that there's something being lost in communications, because I'm hearing the US side trying to say this thing will be renewed. But the level of confidence in terms of what the African side is hearing is not quite there yet. And so there's that pressure to let's get this thing renewed. But on the enhancement side from the minister from Mauritius, is really looking at the capacity building. Like, let's really interrogate this capacity building as part of AGOA as we enhance it, so that African countries can better utilize it. And perhaps borrowing a little bit from the MCC model. Yes, sir.
Yes, but I think I must hasten to add that the head of delegation of the African Union, Minister Nsaoli from Lesotho, is very right. Let's renew first. Because you see, we have a baby here called Africa. You've given it a spoonful to make sure it doesn't die. And now, it needs a second spoon. You can't tell the baby, you know, have a shower first, you know, do this, do that. No, they need the second spoon. Then we survive, and then we can do everything else on enhancement.
All right. Thank you. I don't think I need to add anything more to that. It was very clear. Ms. Flory, your enhancement issue.
So this is what I would say about that, because I can't make it just one thing that, that would be enhanced. But here's what we learned in all of our stakeholder consultations. Many people, including the Africans, even led by the Africans, said, here are the things we would like you to do to AGOA. It was the Africans who, in their reports, said to us, we would like you to add products, we would like you to improve the rules of origin, etc. So here's what I would say. I don't think that we're going to have 2 bites at the apple within a reasonable period of time. If Africans are serious about wanting some additional products covered, and I think you are, if Africans are interested in having the rules of origin changed and enhanced, and I think you are, then it's not clear why we would separate the two things. If it's possible to get AGOA extended in the near term, and it's possible while Congress is doing that, to address some of the concerns that the Africans have had and that the U.S. supported by its own recommendations to Congress. But those recommendations didn't come just sort of out of the sky. They really came from listening to and engaging with a wide range of stakeholders. And so I'm just reminding folks that these things that we have recommended to Congress reflect a lot of the proposals that were made to us in the course of our 1-year comprehensive review of AGOA. And, you know, we are, in fact, there was a report that came to us from the African Union that talked about AGOA 2.0. And in that, there were recommendations. So from my perspective, I would have to say that if we can get some products added, currently there are only 316 tariff lines that are not covered under AGOA. The majority of them are agricultural products. Many of them would be considered sensitive. However, if it were determined by Congress that there are some, a handful, however many, that could be added now under AGOA, why wouldn't we want them to do that? If we can improve the rules of origin to make it easier for Africans, one of the things we're looking at is the rules of accumulation that happen as products move from one African country to another. One of the things we're proposing is that the processing cost, you know, a shirt is produced in Mauritius, but then they have to send it to Kenya for some special enhancements on it. Those processing costs normally would not have been included. So we're recommending that we do that so that as a rule of origin, there's more opportunity to benefit to the Africans working across borders and within various supply chains. So we just think, again, all of the things we've recommended, I'm not going to go through them one by one, but all of the things that we have recommended to Congress, many of them coming from our African partners and other AGOA stakeholders, we think would improve AGOA. And again, if Congress thinks that they can make those amendments now, and move AGOA on through,
Go for it.
I just think, let's go ahead and do that now.
No, thank you. Steve, I'll give you a minute to add your enhancements to it.
I would like to assure our African brethren that there are two procedures. Ways and Means Committee decides and Finance what is possible or not. If they put an enhancement in, they have made the political decision that it's possible, and it will not slow up the approval. So the approval, the enhancement we're talking, which do come out of AGOA 2.0. Let me be very specific about the kinds of enhancements. Currently, people are thinking of small enhancements. We have been working with some African countries, ourselves, to try to get more significant. If we can't get them, fine. We've had to listen to. Flory listens to us. We're happy. We'll get what we can get. But the enhancements that we think are important are one in agriculture. The EU has a system called Everything But Arms. They designate all agricultural products for LDCs, every single one of them. We'd like to see tobacco leaf. We know we can't get sugar. We'd like to see groundnuts. We'd like to see value-added sugar, so you can take your canned goods, you can take your fruits and vegetables, put some sugar. Whether we can do it, I don't know. I mean, we're still going to support it. But those are the kinds of issues. As far as origin rules go, and again, we agree, to us, the importance of AGOA, and the reason why AGOA 1 was so successful, there was a special origin rule for garments. There was never a special origin rule for manufacturers. And what has occurred now is that the initial concept that you finish a product in one country, you get the duty free, is not how the modern day works. It works with assembly lines, global value chains, and African input, well, might be in the middle part. Yeah. So again, we have been arguing that you should look at the rule of origin to see if there's a way, maybe with the whole host of U.S. free trade agreements with other countries, that Africa components can be included, even when they're not finished. I don't know whether they can be done or not. I'm willing to leave it to Flory and her political bosses, Angela and her political bosses, Eisenstadt and his political bosses, to what is possible or not. But I can assure the ministers that if they accept them, whatever they accept, will be in a package that they believe will pass Congress. And let me tell you, when the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm happy we're sitting here talking to mainly, this is the beauty of the Wilson Center. This is when you can talk to the Hill. That's why we appreciate the invitation. When we say there aren't too many people who would take on Ways and Means and Finance if they have put together a trade bill. So that's what I hope, but I don't know what will come out of it. But I would certainly not give up trying to enhance the bill. I think that would be a serious sin for the many, many countries in Africa that currently do not benefit from AGOA. And that's the way I would leave it.
Thank you. We have time for 3 more questions. They're going to have to be short. And so I'll go Ms. Palo over here. I guess, okay, I'll take all of you, but you have to be short. So Ms. Palo over here, my brother over there, and then I'll swing down this way. You have the mic right there.
Thank you, and welcome again, ministers. My question this time is directed to Flory and Steve. First of all, I want to concur with you, Flory. Angela Eller told us directly that we have one shot at this. And the rules of origin, whatever we can get in it the first time should be done. My question to you is this. It's not easy to pass AGOA. We've had to have coalitions. We've had to be strategic. What's the tipping point? I was on the Hill. I love the Hill. I'll be on the record in saying that. But the predictability of Capitol Hill in passing measures cannot be really something that we can stand up here and say. So when do we collectively, since this has been an inside game, when do we go out to the American public? When do we start targeting members who may be obstructionists? What is the day? What is the time? And who is the coordinator?
Okay, thank you. A very powerful point about the need for a strategy. I think there's a gentleman over there. I will come to you. Don't worry.
Thank you very much indeed. My name is Steve Matenja. I'm the ambassador of Malawi.
Okay, I didn't recognize you, so sorry.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say a few remarks. 1 minute may be very short, but I'll try my best.
Thank you.
I think we have come. First of all, let me thank our 2 ministers for making it all the way to come and visit Washington, D.C. on this very important issue. I think we have come a long way. When when I came to Washington, D.C., I came in the middle of the issue of renewal of AGOA. at that time, everybody was concerned about the renewal process itself and wanting to make sure that the renewal was seamless in order not to jeopardize the benefits that have been accrued so far, especially by the textile producing countries. But then eventually, in recent months, hearing from the U.S. Government, from the U.S. administration side, the issue about enhancements, some of us have started to become encouraged by the signals from the U.S. administration regarding enhancement and the possibility that certain products can be included. Those would be probably subject of discussion, obviously, and in any case, it remains it's up to the U.S. Congress to include them. But the fact that Ambassador Froman did indicate to the U.S. Congress that there was need for enhancement and for product coverage, that to me is a positive step forward. So for some of us, maybe our task now is to engage Congress more to ensure that Congress looks at the products that are most valuable to some of our countries. For example, Malawi, tobacco is a real issue. Tobacco to Malawi is what textiles are to countries like Lesotho and Mauritius. So if we're all going to benefit for the next 15 years, that if AGOA is renewed, then I think we need to seriously call upon Congress to look at product coverage. And if that can be done this time around without jeopardizing the renewal of AGOA itself, then I think that's the way we should be going. And I'm encouraged today by hearing Honorable Flori, what she's just said in her remarks. That has encouraged me quite a lot. And I think what we need to do is to, if AGOA can be renewed with some of the products that some of us have been asking for, then why don't we do that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Matanje. Okay, my brothers, I'm going to keep you to 30 seconds for your question, because we have an opportunity to continue the dialogue at the reception, so please.
Yes, please. Thank you very much. This is actually, Ambassador Froman mentioned something unique.
You should introduce yourself so the
Who are you,
ministers
sir?
know who you are.
This is Emmanuel Tamen from Miller and Chevalier. I've been around AGOA and doing this work for many, many years. Wanted to bring one point up. Ambassador Froman mentioned an AGOA compact. And in a sense, he was trying to link what MCC does in a capacity building sense to this whole process. And your point about enhancing this is absolutely crucial. The 4.9 billion after 15 years of exports here, we think could be seriously improved. So that's the first comment. How is the approach for a compact tied to AGOA heading? The second aspect is the President's capacity building working group. You mentioned the middle of February report back to the White House. How is that process going to get incorporated into any AGOA going forward? Is there going to be an issue with USAID, OPIC, TDA, and Exim Bank lumping themselves into some type of an AGOA capacity building initiative? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Fred Oladende, and I'm with the AGOA Civil Society Network. Again, want to congratulate the African Union for sending out such a high-level delegation at this point in time. My question is very simple. All of the enhancements and all of the recommendations from USTR and from civil society and the private sector is well taken. We also hope that we'll have the renewal in a timely and expeditious way. My question will be to the ministers. What would we do this time around to ensure that we optimize the AGOA benefits, and how are you going to work with your civil society to ensure that your parliament is well informed about the benefits of AGOA? I think the cost analysis that was made this morning saying that AGOA will cost the United States $300 million, and I'm glad that the Honorable Minister was also able to see that U.S. export going to Africa almost triple or fivefold the import coming here if we take the non-oil. So what do we do to ensure that the interest and the benefits under AGOA to African countries is optimized? Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the clock that tells me I have 8 seconds left. So we're going to extend this for about 5 minutes. I thought there were some really, really good questions and comments in there. And what I really heard were questions to do with the strategy on both the US side and the African side. What actions are African countries going to take to optimize on the benefits of AGOA? We heard very powerfully from the US side that we have only one shot at this. So let's try as much as possible to get both renewal and enhancement in the same package, because we don't know that we'll get a second shot at it if we don't. So I'll just ask each of our speakers to just take a minute and respond to, pick a question, a comment that was made, and respond to that, and then we'll take the rest of the discussion out into the reception.
Thank you very much. I don't think that the enhancement per se is a problem for me. As long as I think enhancement could not delay the renewal of AGOA. Enhancement is good, of course. And Malawi, Tobago, good, and everything else. But what is important for us now is like we talked about seamless renewal of AGOA, but it seems like we may not get a seamless one, and we are afraid that if we don't renew AGOA, because there are other things that have to be added at the moment, we may not. American Constitution, First Amendment, I think everybody knows about First Amendment, and they like it, But the Constitution of the country is renewed all the time. I mean, there are certain things that people don't like. My Constitution, people will tell me, this Constitution has got holes. What hole? Yes, we can improve it. Let's talk about it and improve it. It will never be like a Bible. Never, never. So every time the interest will differ, the difference will improve, and some people will like this and others will like that. So I think that AGOA cannot be like I think as time goes on, as we go along, I think we'll do the improvements. Now Lesotho has got a country strategic country response strategy. We have a draft, and we're just about to give it to you, madam. And I think other countries also do have. So in the draft, in the strategic response strategy, we've laid down how we're going to improve. We've laid down how Lesotho is going to actually take advantage of AGOA. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Honourable Minister from Mauritius.
Yeah. Well, I've never heard of any country response strategy from Mauritius. So congratulations to Lesotho. But I like the idea of this AGOA country strategy because that would allow a few things. You could have in it some sort of short, medium, and long term, if it's 5, 10, and 15 years. We could then have the implementation plans. At the same time, I think a country strategy could have a heading dealing with civil society. Because after all, all this economic diplomacy going on is meant to be people-centered. So any such AGOA country strategy should have a strong civil society component. And probably, I think probably it might not be a bad idea to have some sort of peer review mechanism. We, as we ministers, we do meet on the different other sort of bodies. COMESA for the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, SADC for the Southern African Development Community. So, and under the AU, we already have under the African Union this African peer review mechanism. So why not use it to have also something for AGOA? So I think I like the idea of this AGOA country strategy with those components. And that might provide at least the beginning of an answer to the enhancement, optimization, and civil society aspect of AGOA.
Ms. Flory, please.
So on the issue of the trade capacity steering group that was established, that is where we hope we can come together in a whole of government strategy, but not just across the U.S. government, but also working with our African partners, international institutions like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the private sector, and work together in a coherent way to address a couple things. One, how can we increase intra-African trade? Because Africa trades the least with each other of any continent in the world. And why is that important? Because the more that you trade within your region and are competitive there, the more you are able to be competitive beyond your region into the global markets. So working with Africa to increase regional trade is critical. And that's where we think the recommendations will go. The other thing that I'll mention, the last thing I'll mention, is looking at what are the particular sectors or products or value chains where with targeted assistance from governments, African governments, US government, but also private sector, where the Africans might actually be able to make a leap in terms of their exports to the US. And so what I would end on is what we know now about the way that global trade works is you want to have regional strategies as well. You don't want to just have national strategies, because a regional strategy, if you look at it, you know that you can take sort of the best that the countries in your region are doing. You can attract investment that comes not just to one small market, but to a larger regional market. You might be able to supply from, say, in East Africa, 2 or 3 countries, but have that product, whatever it may be, processed in one of the other partners, and maybe have the packaging done in yet another partner. These kinds of regional value chains that would feed into global value chains, that's where we think Africa will be able to make the biggest difference over the next decade in terms of its AGOA trade. That's where we think it's going to be critical. And we are already working with the African Development Bank on what are those value chains and how can we help the Africans to do that, and how can we help them to diversify their economies out of the commodities and raw materials, but even to diversify beyond apparel and textiles, because there are many opportunities in terms of value-added production and manufacturing that can be done. And the last thing that I would just say is Lesotho, for example, exports the most in terms of apparel to the US under AGOA. But what if Lesotho were able to provide mirrors to South Africa for the cars that they're shipping to the US under AGOA? What if there were other economies?
We're doing car seats.
Right.
We're doing car seats already.
Yeah.
Covers.
Yeah. And so this is, you know, what if another country, Botswana, could provide some more of the leather? What if that's what we're talking about? That's what those regional value chains will do. Because the chances, no offense to Lesotho, but the chances that Lesotho will develop wholly of its own an automobile sector where investors are going to come in and build the automobiles from front to back there are not as likely as an investor coming to Lesotho to say, okay, they've got the market on the mirrors. So we're going to build a factory that's going to, and that's going to create jobs. So I just wanted to say that that's critical. We need to have new kinds of thinking about how the Africans can take advantage of the global trading system and economy the way that it operates now.
Steve, 30 seconds, my friend.
I reduced myself to 1 minute, so I'm going to do New York, ta-ta-ta-ta. I apologize, but quick. Okay. 1, Paola's question, excellent. AGOA must be part of the legacy. Therefore, it must be enhanced in a way that Mr. Obama can be proud of his TPP, can be proud of his TTIP, Europe, Pacific, but can be part of Africa. So it increases the possibilities of passage, very important. Do not forget, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is a former vice presidential candidate of the Republican Party. He wants a meaningful, you don't go down in history for renewing a program, you go down in history for an enhanced, improving a program. So he's sitting there. So that's my first message. Second message, leadership actually is sitting in the room. Who spoke today? Fred Olende, Walker Williams, Paoli spoke today. That's part of leadership. Manchester Trade would love to work, would be there. We have Paul Weiberg, who isn't with us, but he's very active. Whitney Schneidman. Rosa may decide to spend more time out of Ghana in here. The people are there. You guys visited with the corporate council. You visited with the chamber. Right there, you have your leadership. You listen carefully next week, because the Ways and Means Committee is going to have a hearing on the trade agenda. I don't know if they're going to mention or not, but if they do mention, what's the future will be really important. What we must remember is that if they decide to put it on fast track, don't put the pressure on those Dems who are good friends of Africa but maybe cannot support AGOA. They call it poison pill. There's enough other people around who can do that. So what I really suggest is, and I'm going to make another schedule, a week from Monday in the office of Manchester Trade or anybody else, we will put together the kinds of people that Paoli wants. We'll reach out immediately to the embassy group because you guys are crucial. The Israelis learn how to lobby, we always say, from the African embassy group because they were very much more effective and so on. Let me shut up there, but I promise you a minute, and I win 1 minute and 7 seconds.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, our guests have come a long way, and I thought we would end on a note of asking the Minister from Mauritius to share just one message that he is taking away, the delegation is taking away from their visit to Washington, that they will convey to their constituency and stakeholders at home. So, Mr. Minister, 30 seconds, sir.
Starting now. I think the one thing which we will bring back home is how it was unanimously said to us that AGOA will be renewed is inevitable. That was a great message to hear. However, you're taking 5 seconds away. However, our problem, and we must unfortunately insist on that problem with our colleague here, it has to be in a timely manner. It is a matter of life and death for many industries in many countries of sub-Saharan Africa. I think this is what remains to be said, and my 30 seconds end here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, please join me in thanking our guests. I hate to bring this to an end, but we can continue discussions. You're all invited to a reception with our speakers and all of the AGOA people in this room. Our staff will show you to where the reception is being held, and we'll continue the discussion there. Sir, thank you so much.